So Yeshua is the one who searches the minds and the heart. Yet according to the Tanakh, it is only Yahweh that is able to do this. Jeremiah 17 verse 10. I, Yahweh, search the heart. I test the mind, even to give to each man according to his ways, according to the result of his deeds. Psalm 7 verse 9. O let the evil of the wicked come to an end, but establish the righteous, for the righteous God tries the hearts and the minds. Psalm 26:2. Examine me, O Yahweh, and try me, test my mind and my heart. Jeremiah 11 verse 20. But O Yahweh of hosts, who judges righteously, who tries the feelings and the heart, let me see your vengeance on them, for to you I have committed my cause. When Yeshua asked Peter if he loved him, what did Peter answer him? Peter said, Lord, you know all things. You know I love you. When Peter asked Yeshua about what would happen to one of the disciples in John 21 verse 22, Yeshua answered, if I want him to remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. When Philip asked Yeshua when the kingdom would be restored unto Israel in Acts 1 verse 7, Yeshua told him that it was not Philip's concern to know these things that the Father had ordained. In other words, he knew. Speaking of ignorance, Sami's Allah doesn't know all either. Even though he claims to be all-knowing, he gives away his cards in the Quran. He claims in the Quran that when the Muslims got a beating at Uhud, it was a test so that Allah would know who was faithful, so that he would choose among them witnesses. Surah 3 verse 140. If ye have received a blow, the people have received a blow the like thereof. These are the vicissitudes which we cause to follow one another for mankind, to the end that Allah may know those who believe and may choose witnesses from among you. And Allah loveth not the wrongdoers. In other words, without Uhud, Allah would have no clue who was faithful to him. So where it could be argued that Yeshua was only ignorant in the flesh, Allah, who supposedly sits enthroned in heaven, is ignorant in his majesty. So by Sami's own criteria, his Allah is ignorant and cannot be the God of the Bible.
Number 5, God is all powerful. We all know that. God is all powerful. Jesus himself, when he was 2 years old, can you believe that God is 2 years old? He even admitted that in September when he debated Usama Abdullah. Usama Abdullah brought up a point that Jesus ran away from King Herod when he was 2 years old. Can you imagine this? God runs away from his own creation. Do you know what James White's response to that was? He was like, yeah, he was 2 years old. That's not a rebuttal. He was 2 years old, God was 2 years old, and he ran away.
This must be the most futile of all arguments. I can't help but think that Muslims will be content with anything and everything that they can throw out to us to be able to object to our faith. First, Yeshua didn't run from Herod. Joseph was commanded by an angel to go to Egypt to make sure that the child is not killed before its time. Second, Sami has been told so many times what the incarnation is. Get this to your head. Yeshua pre-existed as God in heaven. He could not die in that form. He could only be hurt in his human form, which is exactly what the incarnation is. The incarnation of the Eternal One is him taking on human flesh. In that form, he could die for our sins, which is the entire reason for him to come in that form in the first place. So the entire reason for his coming was that he would die and make expiation for our sins. That's exactly what he did. He laid aside his power and majesty to become like us. So the entire God running from King Herod is a total nonsensical argument and does nothing but show the desperation of the Muslim apologist to find anything he can get his hands on to try to raise objections. Point number 12.
And here's some more verses which show that God gave Jesus power and authority, just like the Quran says. In John chapter 17, verses 6 to 8, verses 7 says, Jesus says to his disciples, now you know that all things whatsoever that has been given to me are from the Father. All my miracles, all my doctrine, it's not my power. When Jesus heals the leper, it's not him. It's God who gave him the power. And Jesus himself says that. John 13:3, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hand. The Father gave him everything. John 12, verses 49. The Father has told me the commandment. He has given me the commandment of what I should say and what I should speak. John chapter 7, verse 16. Jesus answered them and said, my doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. Exactly. It's the doctrine of God, which is the oneness of God.
Okay, and how this helps the Muslims' case, I have no clue. But obviously Sami has no interest to read all the New Testament has to say, because when he finally does, he will notice that it is fact that everything is given back to Yeshua, not that he got everything that he didn't have beforehand. Philippians 2 tells us that Yeshua first was in the form of God in heaven, then laid everything aside to come down as a man, only to get everything back again, as is said in John 17 verse 5. So we see here that he got restored in his position when he entered into his glory. Everything he's got was his in the first place. And Sami likes to quote verses but completely disregard the context. He quoted John 17 verse 10 and through 8 to claim that all has been given to him by the Father. But Sami totally neglects the following verses. In my debate with Sami, I raised this point and Sami was unable to respond except by denying the obvious. Now, if John 17 verses 6 to 8 is good enough to prove his point, then verse 10 is good enough to falsify his point as well. Let's look at verse 10. All I have is yours, and yours is mine. What creature, either human or angelic, can say that all the Father has is also his? If this verse shows anything, it shows that Yeshua cannot be a mere Rasul, but is more than just a human prophet. Sami objected that the Greek for all here is pas, and doesn't always mean all, literally. So the verse doesn't say that literally all that the Father has is of the Son, but this is merely disingenuous. When Yeshua says all I have is yours, then the word pas is literally all. But when it's the other way around, then all of a sudden that is not the case. Now the next day I challenged him on this verse again, but I read from another translation where it says all I have is yours and all you have is mine. So the word all appears twice in that verse in the translation. And Sami claimed that the word pas is only once in the Greek text in the first part of the sentence. So I read it and I said this was not the case. Now in all fairness, I misread the verse. I just started to learn to read Greek, so that happens. And Sami is right. But even if the word is only used once, the problem still stands. What creature can say that anything God owns is also his? No creature can do that. But in case Sami persists in using this excuse in order to not to admit to this point, let's look at John 16 verse 15, where it reads, all that belongs to the Father is mine. Of course Sami will argue that the word pas doesn't always mean literally all, and this indicates that he really took his time to think through how to twist the clear meaning of these verses. Surely there is rarely a word in ancient languages that has one meaning. The meaning of the word is always determined by the context it finds itself in. So if the context doesn't indicate that the word pas is to be understood in any other way than all, then that's what it means, which is the case in John 16 and 17. So I've challenged him to produce the alternative Greek word that literally means all. Needless to say, he couldn't do it because pas is the standard word to designate all.